I absolutely love of all the qualities that you're speaking of today, personal responsibility, forgiveness. I love that you really include the quality of compassion, because what I have found in working with women is, and working with anyone, actually, men or women, is that compassion is one of the most undervalued, underutilized, and misunderstood qualities that we have. I think that most of us, at least the individuals I work with, when you really get still, do we really know what self-compassion feels like? Do we really know how to nurture ourselves and reconnect to ourselves using this quality of compassion? And cliche as it sounds, you know, the Dalai Lama says, kindness is my religion. And kindness, simple kindness and compassion and kindness towards ourselves, I have found anyway, is very powerful, very potent, very underutilized. So I love that you are highlighting that quality specifically as well.
Well, and speaking of the Dalai Lama, he mentioned at the Peace Summit here in Vancouver a number of years ago that the Western woman will save the world. If we are going to save the world, it is going to be the Western woman. And I think that self-compassion, when we have self-compassion, it's the space to have compassion for others. I'm just getting so excited talking about this. So tell me about your experience and the work that you do around self-compassion.
Excellent question. So I have found with mothers, women, anyone really, we are a culture that is very hard on ourselves. Would you not agree? We're hard on ourselves and we judge ourselves. And I can speak for myself. Often I'm judging myself, and it's so much a part of my internalized voice that I don't even recognize that I'm being hard on myself. I don't even recognize it as a judgment because it's insidious. It's part of my internalized voice. But if I said to you, you know, Mary, oh my gosh, you know, we should have started 10 minutes earlier today, or if I used a tone of judgment towards you externally, it's easier to hear. It's easier to recognize. I wouldn't like it if someone treated me that way. And yet we treat ourselves with the level of judgment. So I think where compassion comes in, compassion is the medicine to judgment. Compassion is the antidote to judgment. And so this is why it's, when you mention the Dalai Lama, the thing about all of this compassion, it's free. It doesn't cost a thing. When we have the awareness and we wake up to the moment that I recognize, oh, I'm judging myself, I'm being harsh on myself. Well, the medicine, the antidote then is to apply to myself this quality of self-compassion. And what I found is that we don't often recognize, well, what is that self-compassion? So I realize I'm judging myself. I realize I'm being hard on myself. But what is self-compassion? Well, I like to use this phrase, it's so understandable. Just that simple phrase, oh, Susie, it's so understandable you might have been anxious about X, Y, and Z. It's so understandable you might have been hard on yourself about X, Y, and Z. When we start a phrase with it's so understandable, it guides us into a softer way of being with ourselves. Judgment comes from our head, and we're seeking to move from our head to our heart. Compassion and this phrase, it's so understandable, is a very specific practical tool we can use to soften into our heart.
That's beautiful. I just wrote that down. I've got my little notes here. It's so understandable. One of the things that I've been working on lately is noticing the judgments that come up. And I notice them about other people or situations, you know, like, oh, I don't like her skirt, or what is she thinking trying to fit into that outfit, or whatever, right? Those things that come just automatically, the running commentary in our minds. And when it's a negative, I notice it. And then the next thing though is I'm kind of in a position where I want to be conscious of that and let those judgments go and have compassion. But do you have any suggestions for having self-compassion towards myself when I'm judging others? Because it goes to noticing the judgment and then kind of judging myself for judging people, which is not going to help.
Exactly. I call them like you have a little knot in consciousness, and then you judge yourself, and now you have a knot on top of a knot in consciousness, and now you have two to unravel. So yes, well, two things come to mind. One is back to this phrase. So let's say, you're walking down the street, and what was she thinking with that skirt? And then you say to yourself, oh, Marie, it's so understandable that you might be judging her skirt because you had a bad morning this morning, or it's so understandable. It's not meant to condone your judgment. It's meant to soften the place inside of you, because I have a saying, the places inside of us that we deem the least attractive, which would be judgment. So the place inside of you that you deem the least attractive is the place inside of you that needs your compassion the most. So the very place inside of you, ironically enough, paradoxically enough, the very place inside of you that even judged that person to begin with needs your compassion the most. So when I find myself judging someone else, and this is especially true with mothers and our children, when I find myself judging my son, the first thing that I do is, in my mind's eye, I pretend that I'm holding up a mirror to myself. And with compassion, I say to myself, I would not be judging him if I wasn't already judging myself about something. You would not have judged this woman on the street, this hypothetical woman on the street with her skirt, if you yourself were not already holding a judgment about yourself. Because a peaceful heart doesn't judge. So if in fact you're judging someone else and you say, oh, I wouldn't be judging this woman if I wasn't holding a judgment to about myself. And then I say, oh, what that judgment inside of me needs most is compassion. And then that kind of segues into your other quality about forgiveness.
Beautiful.